So for those of you who are not informed about this issue, Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, recently came out and basically asked the rich people of Los Angeles City to provide more funds so they could, either donate housing, buy more housing for homelessness. And everybody's kind of like, well, that $24 billion that you guys have spent on homelessness that you just said that, you weren't really tracking, why don't you use some of that? Those were tax dollars. Yeah. And the city's, a lot of people are peeved, from rich people to middle class to lower class, because my main thing with this is, if you tax the rich and you get the money and then you don't do anything with it, why are you going to continue to ask the rich to do more when you already couldn't do what you said you were going to do with the tax dollars that you have? And I think this is the biggest failure with the Democratic Party, because they have the money, they have the supermajority, they have everything they want here in California, and then they just fall short based off of their own policies and actually putting them into practice. And there's nobody to blame. There's no Republican to scapegoat and say, well, the Republicans and these people. It's like, no, you guys are in power.
What do you mean? That's just racist, bro.
Well, that's what they just gaslight you. But I just thought it was an interesting thing, because at the end of the day, it's like, if you're going to overtax the rich, right, you're going to make sure that they pay the most, whatever, and then you don't do anything.
Overtax is an interesting choice of words there, but I definitely understand.
I mean, if you would say that,
why are you being a communist? What's going on?
Okay, first of all, fucking no. I'm trying to not swear.
Okay, but I'm just saying,
overtax the rich is a very interesting choice of words.
I mean, I would just like to say, the Revolutionary Wars fought over a 2% tax. I'm just saying.
And we're at 40 now?
No.
Like the muskets.
The top marginal tax rate is almost 60% for, anybody making over.
I mean, during World War II, it was like 90%. There's a long history of varying options in that. Yeah. I mean, what do you want?
No, I get. Okay, I get it.
When we're trying to get out of the Great Depression, we need the Conservation Corps and a bunch of public works and giving people jobs and a bunch of other shit. But overtaxing the rich is an interesting turn of phrase.
Bad choice of words. But either way, at the end of the day, if you have all this money that you're getting because of your tax policies, and then
you waste it,
and you're like, I mean, we didn't really care to track where that money was going, and then the mayor's like,
yeah, it's lining their pockets.
Give me some more money.
The homeless industrial complex is being studied currently, and it is wildly out of pocket, and funds are just being stolen all the time. Yeah. And it's just going to their friends.
I mean, it's not only that. I mean, there are a lot of great programs in Los Angeles that are actually doing things. The thing is, it's overshadowed
having one or
by
two good programs when people are stealing millions of millions every day, it doesn't amount to much.
It's like when we talked to the mayor of Los Angeles and we had him on here, and he was saying, the rate at which people are becoming homeless because they can't afford housing here is literally, we put 2 people in housing and then 3 people go homeless.
Yeah.
So
the rates are staying the same or going up.
Exactly. And right now we're kind of just subsidizing, we're just like, oh, well, the city's going to pay for everybody's housing, and that's how that's basically what they're doing.
Right.
And it works, but the thing is if you don't curb the rate at which people are becoming homeless, then we're literally stuck in a perpetual cycle of constant funding of homelessness. And instead, we need to basically buy the land, build the housing, whatever. But then there's NIMBYs. So it's literally like we the people, and I'm not saying me.
NIMBYs are not in my backyard people who don't want the housing and the resources for people in their neighborhood.
Which is literally pretty much everyone in Los Angeles County. Because everybody's like, oh my God, homelessness is such a bad problem. But
in someone else's backyard.
Exactly.
I think someone was telling me when I was in Texas that there are zoning laws, or the lack of zoning laws, that avoids that, apparently.
So
I think in Dallas or Houston.
So in Texas specifically, they have a lot less regulations when it comes to building housing. One major thing here in Los Angeles that kind of holds us back is the regulations. And people are like, oh, you're just, anti-democrat, whatever. But it's like, no,
you can have too many regulations that end up costing way more money than it would have been.
Parking.
Parking.
And then the rules and regulations when it comes to a certain amount of units and what you have to provide. So when it's over 3 units, on a plot of land, like one, you have to provide parking on site, and then on top of that, you have to provide like open spaces for the people that live there, and then they need a balcony, and on the roof it needs to have this, and then you quickly go from like, hey, I just wanted to spend like $500,000 to like build this property, to like, okay, $1 million, $2 million, and then everybody's like, why is all the new housing luxury? It's because parking and all the freaking rules and regulations that go into building it.
I mean, but have you been to neighborhoods, visited friends who live in apartment complexes where there's like 10 whole parking spaces on the street outside of, if you only have room in your tiny little driveway for a car and there's 10 spaces and 10 spaces, like people fight tooth and nail for those parking spots.
Understandable.
And so it's like, I got to park 5-6 blocks away to like meander over.
What's the trade-off? I don't think, like currently in its current form, I don't think that you should have to provide parking for every single space, like every single person that's going to be in there. And the reason I say that is because that's a lot of square footage that goes into, building an actual complex, right?
Yeah.
So if they build at ground level, right, which is like the first floor, there's already a bunch of rules and regulations when it comes to that. You're like, just build underground, but we live in an earthquake-prone area, so there's a bunch of rules and regulations where you have to reinforce the underground. Dude, there's so much that goes into the actual building. You're going to have to pick or choose your
battles. The easiest thing would be to just have permitted parking for the neighborhood.
Exactly.
But permitted parking for the neighborhood is also an issue because when you're trying to do like, if you're trying to do permitted parking for the neighborhood, then it's like, okay, so all of the businesses in the area suffer because they have, metered parking or whatever. And like, you can get a permit for, how many people these days can afford their own apartment and aren't dealing with like a partner and them, or them and a roommate or two, or a couple?
Almost no one.
Like, apartments are not as affordable as they used to be for your average, formerly home buyer, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, if I only get one apartment for me and my girlfriend, both of us have our own car, like most Americans' most valuable asset is their vehicle. And so if you're in a relationship where the only way you can afford an apartment is if you're splitting it with 1 or 2 or 3 other people, and they're like, this apartment has a parking space, then it's like, how are we supposed to get around that?
You just got to blame the local governments and the state, and there you go. Because it's really it really comes down to homelessness is a problem because we need to build more housing, but there's so many rules and regulations when you want to build that housing. Damn. And then on top of that, when it becomes affordable housing, then it's like, I don't want you in my neighborhood. Like, what was it, Culver City, or there was some neighborhood that was like, we're going to be building affordable housing, and it was like $1 million a unit.
Probably Redondo.
I was going to say Westchester. I've heard a lot of stuff going on, but they're buying up a lot of the land just to the north of Westchester, and they're planning on demolishing all of those houses and turning them into condos. They're also
if they don't get sued.
They just rezoned the Ladera Center. Apparently, it's going to be turned into condos at some point.
I mean, but
it's going to take a long time.
I mean, it's going to take a minute, but
and they get sued every freaking time.
I know, but the plan is all of these, like, good, I'm glad we're getting more luxury condos.
Because, like I said, if I don't have the article on me right now, but it was basically a home builder explaining. He was like, everybody's always wondering why all these new things are luxury, like all these new apartment buildings are luxury. And he literally broke it down because he was a contractor and he builds these for a living.
Yeah.
And he was like, they have to be luxury because of
the
all the freaking things that like you have to put all these things in because of the rules and regulations. So then it's like, okay, a lot of people see homelessness as these drug addicted people on the streets, but in reality, it's just like regular people that just can't afford to live here. And a report just came out that
most of them are that.
What?
Drug addicted or suffer from mental illness.
Homeless? No,
yeah. Not
that's
most,
not true.
But
that's
it is an
true.
Unfortunately large population.
There's a large
80%.
There's a large population of that, but there's also a very large population that you never get to see. That are, like I said, those people that are like living in their cars. They come to the programs, they find them housing, and you never even heard about them.
Because they're using the resources effectively because they're not mentally ill.
Exactly.
And they're just in the programs
the stuff
and
that
being
we were
supported.
looking up, it was like 60 to 80%, or it was like.
So just to set the record straight, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, they gave a report in 2022 on your point. 40,000 people, which are 23% of the total population, are severely mentally ill. And 36,000 people, or 21% of the population, are chronic substance abusers. So both of those together, there might be some overlap of the mentally ill and the substance abusers. But assuming they're all independent, that would be like 45%.
See the recent report of that Los Angeles and Los Angeles County is at like an all-time low of permits being applied for like new apartment complexes and everything as well.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it also, remember Nithya Rahman and her mansion tax, which everyone thought it only applied to mansions, but actually really applied to apartment complexes, condos, industrial buildings, and it didn't even it's not even for the person buying the property, it's for the person selling the property. And so it's funny to me because a lot of people don't understand that there are people and there's a lot of businesses, what they will do is they will go into an area, they will buy the land for cheap, and then they will turn it around and then sell it to a developer that wants to hold it long term. And when you go to them and then you say, okay, we're going to take an even larger percentage out of your profits, they're going to be like, I think we're going to just go to the county instead of the city. And that's exactly what happened. They were expecting $500 million to $1 billion to be raised, and they only raised $150 million. They need to
create more tax incentives and credits that get people to move out of the city, and they need to make housing more accessible by deregulating it. Essentially,
it's not even like getting them to move out of the city. It's just that you should be able to build if you want to build like a 4-unit complex. No,
it is also complex. That because there's too many people, so it doesn't matter if you deregulate it. If there's still too many people, it'll only lessen the problem. It won't get anywhere near solving it.